This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
With early detection comes early prevention.
Put that in your pencil, make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again, let nothing keep you down. To live your best, hear the urologist speak. Oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your man, don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed, it's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
You will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I telling you, with early detection
Comes early prevention.
but letting your pencil make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again.
Let nothing keep you down. Live your best. Hear the urologist speak.
Good evening, Bahamas. This is the Urologist Speaks with Bahamian urologist Dr. Gregeggory Pinto, and again, my co-host, Dr. Wesley Francis, who is a Bahamian general surgeon and surgical oncologist. He's also previous head of the MAB, president of the MAB, which is the Medical Association of the Bahamas. And in the studio, we are very pleased to have again the esteemed Bahamian gastroenterologist and internist and the current president of the MAB, Medical Association of the Bahamas, Dr. Gemma Rule. Good evening to you, madam, and good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Good
Bahamas,
evening.
and welcome, Gemma.
So we're here in anticipation of the MAB, Medical Association of the Bahamas conference, which is upcoming, and I'm going to let Dr. Gemma Rule give all those details. But essentially, the topic for the entire conference is one that's very near and dear to my heart and to the whole Urologist Speak movement that I've been trying to create, and that's to try to reduce the number of Bahamians and residents with non-communicable diseases. So essentially, we're looking at non-communicable diseases, which is an overwhelming problem in our society. We could look at it as almost unsurmountable. It's affecting every facet of our society. Our healthcare system is on its knees because of the economics and the physical toll of trying to manage non-communicable diseases, and there seems to be no end in sight. But if we try to do something, maybe something can happen. I mean, in the darkness, if we can light a match, maybe we can be a beacon of hope for our nation. We can turn the tide. So we're not going to give up, and we will never give up, although our obesity rates are astounding. The rates of diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. So worldwide and in the Bahamas, about 74% of all deaths are attributed to non-communicable diseases or conditions, such as, of course, the common ones are heart disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and chronic lung diseases. But there's so many others that you may not think off the top of your head are considered to be non-communicable diseases, but those include mental and disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disease. We talk about post-traumatic stress. We have a very stressful and traumatic society. Trauma in itself is considered a non-communicable disease by NHI, the National Institute of Health. So we need to look at ourselves as an entire being. We have to look at ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically. We have to look at the physical trauma. That's also a form of a non-communicable disease. We are a very violent society. Assault, car accidents, sexual assaults. These are all playing a horrible toll on our society. Can we speak a little bit about what we're talking about now, Dr. Gemma Rule?
All right. Good evening. First of all, thank you, Dr. Pinto, Dr. Francis, for inviting me once again on this show. And I also wish to commend you on the continued production of this informative program. It may be difficult to quantify the impact you have in spreading important messages, but your work is undoubtedly touching many lives in ways that we may not be always visible, okay? So let me first just talk about the MAB, the Medical Association of the Bahamas. Our mission is to enhance relationships amongst the medical professionals in the country. We wish to support the improvement in their knowledge and skills, to elevate the standard of medical services in the country, advocate for public health, uphold ethical standards, promote the interests of the profession, and to collaborate with other similar organizations. It is a statutorily recognized body with representation on the Bahamas Medical Council, the Bahamas Nursing Council, the National Health Insurance Board. And this executive makes great strides to stay collaborating with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And I'd also like to make a special mention of the executives. We have our Vice President, Dr. Nikisha Hall-Dennis. We have our Treasurer, Dr. Therese Nair-Knowles. We have our Secretary, Dr. Nina Thompson. We have two trustees, Dr. Reginald Nemore and Dr. Arlington Lightbourne. Good evening to you all, and thank you for the hard work that you do. So upcoming on April 30th will be the start of our 53rd annual scientific conference that is put on every year by the Medical Association. It's like the highlight of the year's work. This year, as you mentioned, is the topic of the silent pandemic of non-communicable diseases. And where we got this idea from was at last year's conference, which the topic was AI in medicine. The Minister of Health had announced that he would launch a campaign for non-communicable diseases. And so we kind of wanted to piggyback off of that and have this year's conference highlight that. So it's a full two-day conference of sessions of physicians that come from far and near to speak on several topics. And we have our opening night where we'll hear from the executive, we'll hear from the Minister of Health, we'll hear from the NHI. We'll hear from a number of key persons. And our actual keynote speaker for the evening will be an international speaker on the topic of abortion. So this is a topic that...
It's a hot topic.
It's a very hot topic. Mm-hmm. It's so hot that we can't even talk out loud about it. So I am so excited to hear from Dr. Chioma Ndubisi. She's coming from Philadelphia. She is a reproductive health rights advocate, spreading information. And so we want to perhaps be able to get this topic less taboo, right? So we'll just start off with that. But of course, our 2 days are filled with dynamic speakers coming from far and wide, as I said. We have a total of 30 speakers, 10 of which will be coming in from abroad, so far as University of Toronto, University of Alabama, Augusta Medical College of Georgia, the Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, UWI, Cleveland Clinic, West Virginia University, University of Maryland, Baltimore, and Baptist Hospital right there in Florida. Half of those international speakers are actually Bahamian physicians that have gone abroad to matriculate and who may have settled there, hopefully with goals to bring their knowledge and expertise back.
This conference is open to the public, correct?
So no? Well, it is a conference that is for all of the physicians, members of the Medical Association. It is a paid conference. We provide coffee, meals, and whatnot. So there is a charge for that. We are hoping to eventually expand it. We had wanted to do something this year for the general public, just pick a topic and have persons come in, but the logistics of it we're still working on. So hopefully by next year we can have simultaneous sessions or sessions that can be brought out of this for the general public. We're hoping, or it's a work in progress to be more present in the public. But certainly this is part of one of our missions, which is to support the improvement of knowledge and skills of our physicians. Okay.
So, Dr. Roll, I mean, you talk about the medical association, and just for our listening audience, because there's the medical council and then there's the medical association. What's the big difference between those two bodies, per se, just for people who are not aware?
Mm-hmm. So in order for physicians to legally practice medicine in the Bahamas Medical Council vets all physicians that are applying for licensure. And they are the body that's responsible for regulating what we do from a legal standpoint, ensuring that we have continuing medical education credits, and also if there are any complaints brought about by patients or other physicians, keeping us in line, I guess, to say in check. And there's a process that is in place for that. And that's really to protect the public, right? Making sure that the physicians that you're seeing are who they are and they're qualified to do so. The medical association has representation on that medical council, right? So we at the association is to safeguard our profession and make sure that when things are brought to the board and or anything that may arise from that, we have a representation of physicians at the medical council.
So the conference this year, you say, is the 53rd.
Yes.
And where's it going to be located?
So it's going to be held at the British Colonial Hotel, where we have had our conference years before. We've bounced around a few places, Atlantis, Bahamar. But this year we're back to the British Colonial Hotel. And we are oversubscribed with dynamic speakers, vendors. We'll have persons from pharmacy, drug agencies, medical supplies. We are going to also delve into financial health. So we hope to have representation from the banks, insurance companies in terms of life and disability insurance to educate our physicians. We seek to have representation from National Insurance Board when just to make sure that physicians know how to, for example, assist persons for like workers' compensation and things like that. Also, we have a number of healthcare facilities. We have nursing homes. So there's some buy-in with that. We also have representation from the nurses. We have nurses speaking and agencies that can provide home care for our patients. We have physical therapy. So we have a broad range of vendors available to all the physicians. And so if you are interested for the next year's conference, if you have a market for physicians, if you want to let us know about your services, you can reach out to the MAB, the Medical Association. We can be found on, we have our own website, mabbahamas.com. Reach out to us and let us know what your interests are, and maybe we can get you plugged in for next year and it can be bigger and better.
So this year's topic, non-communicable diseases, I'd say particularly chronic non-communicable diseases like cancer, and then the lifestyle diseases like hypertension, diabetes. Give us in kind of your feel of what kind of impact that we're seeing in our community with that. I know there's some stats out there, but on the ground, what you're seeing, I know we just coming off of Colon Cancer Month, and we talked about that last time. And I know there was a huge push for doing colonoscopies. But overall, chronic CNCDs, and that's the term they use, non-communicable diseases. Let us know what's the real impact beyond just the numbers.
I mean, certainly we're losing the battle. That's the most important thing. So
seems
education
so.
is key. It's an overwhelming problem. It's getting worse year by year. We are a very unhealthy nation, very unhealthy. Top 10 in all the worst categories, unfortunately, even starting with childhood obesity. As many as 40% of children are overweight or obese. And there's no reason that it has to be that way. In many ways that we are what we eat. And in the Bahamas, our poor diet, our sedentary lifestyle are two things that are slowly killing our nation. So we need to turn the tide, and it's never too late. It's not too late for this generation.
Right.
It's not too late for the next generation. We're overwhelmed with cancers. We've discussed in many previous programs, Dr. Francis, about modifiable and non-modifiable factors related to cancer. And there's so many modifiable factors, the things that we can do that can prevent us from going down the road of getting cancer. Mm-hmm. So we need to educate the public. We need to rally the troops, and those are the physicians and the medical fraternity. And we need to fight the fight to the last man standing in trying to save our nation from these non-communicable diseases.
Yes, I agree. And as stated earlier, Dr. Pinto, you mentioned the 74% of all-cause mortality being caused by non-communicable diseases. I think most people are familiar with the cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes. We have an alarming number of persons who you wake up in the morning and you hear that so-and-so died in their sleep, and they're like under the age of 50, or, really young. Sudden death by an MI or heart attack or stroke, right?
Or we just need to look at the overwhelming number of patients and persons in our country on hemodialysis and the cost to our nation. The cost
we could
to
spend
that,
a whole hour talking about
and so many of them it's
kidney
because of
disease.
non-communicable diseases that we could have prevented.
Definitely. We are an obese nation. We are ranking very high. I want to say we're number one, but I'm not too sure, at least in our region. More women than men
Last time
being
it
obese.
was 6 or something like that, right?
6?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Okay.
you don't even want to be on that number, on that anywhere in the top 10, right? And that's a problem. And the one thing, Pinto just said, these are all lifestyle issues. And then hypertension, for example, silent killer. It doesn't cause any pain initially, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not overnight. It's not an overnight thing. It's something that is progressive. It takes time. Mm-hmm. So your blood pressure may be out of control and you don't really feel anything
Until you do.
Until you do, mm-hmm. right? And it's years of that pressure load on what we call target organs, like the arteries in your brain, the arteries in your kidneys, the arteries in your heart. And so you can see just hypertension alone, you can extrapolate it and look at the downstream effect of that. And remember, it's painless, doesn't hurt.
Right.
And the only way sometimes you will really get to know that you are hypertensive is if you just check your blood pressure. Right? And see your primary care doctor. And so it's fundamentally important for all individuals to have a relationship with their family care physician.
Yes.
And that's where preventive medicine starts. Because if you are hypertensive, hypertension is treatable. And you can take medication, or not everybody has to take even medication. Lifestyle changes can bring your blood pressure down. And then what that does, that mitigate these long-standing effects, these long-standing downstream complications. Because what we're seeing really is long-term complications of hypertension: stroke, heart attacks, kidney failure. Mm-hmm. And then we as we just mentioned, the burden of kidney failure on the individual on the family, and then on the health system. When you multiply that effect and then put a dollar figure to that, you can see, the loss of that person doesn't work anymore. The productivity is lost, and how that just works its way into the greater economy. And so it's important for us to, I think, emphasize, and I think chronic non-communicable diseases is a timely topic.
Yes.
Because it is going to, it will, and it is now affecting all aspects of our healthcare, and our healthcare financing. And we always talk about someone is paying for healthcare, whether you like it or not, whether it's in the government system, whether it's in the private system, money is being paid. And the more people who are not productive, who are sick because of these things that are all preventable, just think about the downstream effect on what happens in the system.
Yeah.
That's another topic we spoke about in the past, Dr. Francis, and that's the cost of trauma on our medical system.
Trauma too.
And that's a form of
Right.
non-communicable disease.
That's like an acute non-communicable
Yes.
disease.
Can become chronic.
Which yes.
And then we talk about it's more complex than that. We can have the best, most efficient medical system in the world. We have NHI. You don't have to pay for medications. You can get your annual physicals. You can, quote unquote, be treated like a private patient, paid solely by the government. But we have to look at the psyche of the typical
right.
Bahamian patient, where if they're told they're diabetic, they don't accept it. If they're told they're hypertensive, they don't take their medication.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complex than just identifying the problem. We need to look at the psyche of the Bahamian, where they'll refuse to accept the fact that they're overweight. They refuse to change their poor habits and behavior. They don't want to take medication. If they'll take it for a while. They live in ignorance. It's a terrible problem. It's so many facets to this problem. We have a call. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Good evening, Dr. Pinto. Good evening, guests in studio. As a Bahamian, I'm enjoying this conversation. And I've actually been someone who is in their 60s who have watched the lifestyles in this country change dramatically from growing up as a little boy to now. The most important thing that I focus on a lot is the quality of foods, which I believe impacts us significantly, taking into consideration the high level of cancer and other non-communicable diseases that we are all encountering today, whether you are trying to live healthy or not. These aspects are impacting us. First and foremost, water quality. I am still yet hear agencies, talk about the different qualities, whether it's air quality, food quality, water quality, so on and so forth. And from this aspect, to say that any one in itself is not impactful, I believe all of them together greatly and significantly impact us to a great extent, unbeknownst to a whole lot of us. In closing here, I would say, basically food testing has always been something that I was very curious about, who goes about testing especially the importation of foods and vegetables. We don't hear sufficiently enough whether there is testing in these areas. The education on the organic foods that we do here, especially our vegetables, in comparison to the imports. Where are the studies? Where are the research, so on and so forth? I believe, yes, in some cases, Bahamians are ignorant to these things, but then we also have some people who are willfully ignorant because they know better. And after all the warnings that we would have gotten about the types of foods we eat and the starches and the carbohydrates and so on and so forth, how much we should consume on a daily basis, but we overindulge or overconsume. I believe it goes right back down to the educational component of teaching our people how to eat properly and do it in portions. I believe that is another conversation that we should have going forward. But thanks for taking my call. I'll continue to listen, and I fully, Dr. Pinto, enjoyed this program more than you could ever imagine. Good day to you all.
Well, thank you very much for your kind call and your insightful comments. But we just need to look at within our own archipelago of islands. We look at the health, look at the longevity of our family island residents versus those who live in the more industrialized Nassau and Freeport. They're much healthier. They have a lot less in terms of non-communicable diseases. Even in terms of their stress level, it's a lot lower than the ones that are typical Nassovians. So we have to look at many things. We have to look at not just things such as hypertension, diabetes. We have to look at hopelessness. We have to look at despair, anxiety, chronic stress, post-traumatic stress. I mean, so many of us have been victims of crime, whether it's a home invasion or being held up at gunpoint or knife point. These are things that affect. There's so many children. How many children have been have actually seen a dead body? It's astonishing. How many have heard a gunshot? How many have actually been witness to crimes themselves? And that lives with them, and that becomes a part of them, and they live with that post-traumatic stress, and that affects them, from sleep disorders to binge eating to try to cope with the post-traumatic stress. A lot of persons are not seeking psychological or psychiatric help to overcome the burden of their post-traumatic stress. So there's so many things that we need to do, and it's not just in terms of the physical, but it's also the mental, spiritual, and psychological.
If I may just touch on what the caller had just mentioned when we talk about our diet, the last risk factor report that on non-communicable diseases that was published from the Ministry of Health in 2019 showed that the Bahamian diet is driving the population towards more unhealthy states, consuming too little fiber, too much sugar, and salt. Concretely, 85% of the population does not meet the minimum daily intake consumption of fruits and vegetables. There is a high rate of fried food consumption, with more than 50% of the population eating fried foods up to 3 times a week. Okay? I do not fry food in my house. Okay? Never. That's 0.
Man, you know you just eat one snapper, one fried snapper.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean,
Now,
I
never.
and that's I understand that, and I mean, and culture is culture. Culture is really what we do, right?
3 times a week, 50% of the population? That's a lot.
And that's a lot. But it's not. We could use that information and say, oh, that's a lot, right? But we could really look at. I mean, it's going to be a cultural revolution to almost change that, right? And I'm not saying that we can't do it, but understand what's at stake. And I think people have to be individually become responsible for their health and so, right? But I mean, snapper. Oh, we got a call. Okay.
Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening. Go ahead.
Hello, how you doing, Doc?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm a John Marola. How you doing, man?
Hi, good evening. How are you?
How's my
Good.
good buddy Bozy?
He's good.
Tell him Sparky say hello, eh?
All right, I will.
I guess I'll see him and the boys on Friday by Sanders Beach.
Definitely.
But, Doctor, I've listened to these different shows over and repeatedly about the state of the health of my beautiful Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And we've been talking this. Especially a lot of my friends are doctors, dentists, lawyers, accountants, and this and that and that. But we seem to just talk in this country, Because, for example, I go to the hospital and we talk about obesity and high blood pressure and diabetes and what number we are in the Caribbean compared to our population is less than what we talk about. Haiti, the bottom of us is 11 million people in their country. We don't even have 500,000 people in the Commonwealth of the Bahama Islands, and yet we rated nearly top in the line for diabetes and high blood pressure. And when you go to the hospital itself, I coming out of the room, and the nurse
was feeding me in the room, trying to take care of me, could hardly get inside the damn door, inside the room. The nurse, bigger than the doggone Guinea, the nurse could hardly get inside her own car and look like her white.
We lost it?
Yes. Well, I am not going to let you disparage our nurses. They're what holds our society together. That's what holds our.
No, I think he was listening.
Yeah. So I understand it's not one profession that's fighting the scourge of obesity or being overweight. It's very difficult being a nurse. The stress is overwhelming. You put your patients before yourself. For many of these nurses, they put their children, their husbands, their spouses above themselves, and it's hard for them to find the time to eat right and to get exercise, etc. Working shifts, it can be a terrible burden. You can understand how it affects your longevity, working shift work. So I'm gonna herald the angels of our medical fraternity, the nurses, and I'm not going to let you speak badly about them. Okay. So we'll talk more on the other edge of the break.
Always on the go? Missed the show? You can now listen to Guardian Radio talk shows anytime, anywhere on Spotify and YouTube by searching Guardian Radio 96.9 FM or by entering the name of your favorite show. You can also listen by logging on to GuardianTalkRadio.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Guardian Radio, continuing to provide you with fresh news and smart talk anywhere, anytime, all day.
Girl, Junior just showed me Bella Boy on his phone.
What you mean? He take picture of that good for boy?
Shh, you don't want Bella here. You say that. You know she always say that's my good child.
So what he doing in Junior phone?
Oh, he there because the police looking for him. He on their wanted list.
Wanted persons in your phone now?
Yes, child. And when police want to find anybody quick, after something happen, they can send pictures direct to your phone. Go to Google Play or App Store and search for Crack Crime Bahamas. Then pick install and it will go straight to your phone.
There is also a section on missing persons.
Yes, girl. Everybody needs to get this app so police can tell us right away when these people go missing. Just like an alert system.
Yes, it has numbers for Crime Stoppers Bahamas, so you can call and nobody knows it's you. Call directly to Miami and give the information without giving your name or anything about you. I tried the other day, and when I hear Junior and his boys talking about where they hide those guns, I walk quick round the corner and call that number.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
You try to rest, but roll with the best. For all your needs, there ain't no one better, no. For posters and banners, magazines and flyers. For window decals, greeting cards and newsletters. No job too big and there's no job too small. You name it, we can print it, just give us a call. Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back. This is Urologist Speaks with Bahamian Urologist Dr. Gregeggory Pinto and my co-host, Bahamian surgical oncologist and general surgeon Dr. Wesley Francis. And we're pleased to have the MAB, Medical Association of the Bahamas president, gastroenterologist and internist, the well-known and respected Dr. Gemma Roll. We're here trying to turn the tide, and we have a scourge of non-communicable diseases and conditions in our country that have put our medical system on its knees. We're dying needlessly. persons who have their whole life to look forward to or are being struck with diabetes. I had to do general surgery before I became a urologist, and just the fact that I had to deal with amputations and infected diabetic feet, you just never forget that. You never forget the smell of gangrene, rotting limbs from uncontrolled diabetes and vascular disease. And that's something that we see overwhelming in our public health system,
So in
our private health
urology,
system.
what are you seeing with diabetes? What are the complications? in
Well,
urology?
the first thing we're going to talk about is erectile dysfunction. We're going to talk about diabetic cystopathy, where persons are not emptying their bladder and going into acute renal failure and chronic renal failure.
What percentage of your patients would you say have urologic complications from their diabetes?
At least, well, just in terms of erectile dysfunction, even if for well-controlled diabetics, at least 40% of men are going to have some form of erectile dysfunction. But as we mentioned, it's not just recognizing that you do have a non-communicable disease. It's actually staying with your doctor and trying to manage that disease and stop ignoring the fact that you were diagnosed with that disease.
So great. As colleagues, let's face it, right? By the time we're specialists, by the time we're seeing people, we're really seeing complications of these issues, right?
Very much so.
And I mean, it's almost as if, we're picking up the bodies at the end of the river. And upstream is where all of these things are happening. And they're not happening overnight. There's a latency period. It takes some time for this to happen. People don't just have diabetic foot in one night. People don't just have a breast full of cancer in one night, right? It's all of those either, as we always talk about, modifiable risk factors, right? So how do we, and this is for the medical association too, and not only us, but I mean policymakers, make that change or that shift or focus on primarily preventing these things, because what we're bombarded at the end of this road. We're dealing with everything that you said just now, Gregeggory, as just complications. And there's not a million, but a lot of people, a good number of people out there with hypertension who not having any complications and don't even know, right? How do we get that person to change their behavior such that they don't come to us? I think that's the real issue there, right?
The psyche of the nation. We consume too much in the way of alcohol. We use alcohol to medicate ourselves. We look at the armed forces, the police. They're on the front line. They see the worst of society. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They're working long shifts.
So we focus on mental health for the police, for the armed forces.
Very much so. I mean, there are too many police officers who are putting themselves in harm and danger, physically and emotionally and psychologically.
So it's occupational hazard.
And they don't have enough outlet. They don't have the psychiatrists, the psychologists for them to deal with their own post-traumatic stress disorder. There are too many police, defense force officers who are coming in with alcoholic liver disease, and Dr. Gemerol can speak about that. There are too many are coming in with upper gastrointestinal hemorrhages and bleeds that are life-threatening.
So, again, all complications of, or known complications of these chronic diseases that, again, I stress, don't start overnight.
No.
Right. So how do we get people to change their behavior? And I mean, we have the conference coming up. What's the focus? Is there any focus in the conference to educate physicians on how we now then educate the public or affect policy changes that may impact, change some incentive to help people change their behavior? You can tell someone to, someone with a diabetic foot already to change their dressing, do all this, that. Yeah. They still have a problem, right?
Right.
That sometimes goes beyond what we can do. So what is the primary care impact of what's happening in the conference?
So Well, the conference really is to present to all the physicians what's the latest in the literature, what's the latest happening in medicine and surgery, and bring this to the attention of everyone. We also have residents and students that present their research, right? So it's from the standpoint of what the physicians are getting from the conference, we're updated in everything in the field, okay? That's a very good question, and perhaps we should have another conference that focuses on how are we going to advocate change in the country. That's a great point that you bring up, because it's not really the primary focus, right? So whenever I speak publicly, always at some point, I would mention when the question is asked to me, what can a patient do to improve on their health? At the very least, visit your physician once a year, regardless of how good you feel. These non-communicable diseases are silent killers. At least go and see your physician and request or demand a comprehensive workup of blood work and a physical exam. Okay, doing that at least once a year, following up on what the results of that would be, and making changes, whether conservative or medication-wise, some type of intervention, and follow up if it's working, maybe the way that we focus on, you go to church every Sunday, or maybe you go once a month. Before the end of the year rolls out, did you visit your doctor? Make that a religion. Make that something that you want to do. And, if you are disappointed with the physician that you have visited, the physician that you selected, there are so many physicians that you can choose from, right? If your child is in the wrong school, you pull the child out and you take them to another school. If you don't like your physician, or if you're not getting the most out of the physician that you have the free will to select another. I want to give kudos to the National Health Insurance for the efforts that are being made to ensure that healthcare is accessible to the nation. Good thing too about NHI is that they are able to record the numbers of persons with non-communicable diseases, because even though we publish these statistics, I think that there are more persons who are suffering. Organizations like the World Health Organization or PAHO, they want to know what our statistics are. They want to know where should funding be directed to, because we have the proof that our nation is dying from XYZ. So signing up or having being part of the NHI, where there are about 150,000 beneficiaries, which is almost half the population, that's great. So we should have some good statistics rolling out in the next year or two to know how unwell the nation is, right? See your physician. We won't know what is happening really, truly in our communities unless you at least visit at least once a year. Get your blood work, know where you're at.
Well, I find it very common. Every day I'll ask, obviously I see people at the end of the road as a specialist, but I see persons, and the first question I'm going to ask, have you enrolled yourself at NHI? And many of them have. And they'll also respond, oh, but I haven't gone to my NHI doctor in 5 years.
Not good.
Or I signed up, but I never went to anyone.
Not good.
So what's the purpose of letting such a wonderful system not be utilized, and we're dying needlessly? And we talk about cancer. How many times do we talk about cervical cancer essentially not being eradicated by the HPV vaccine, which is readily available? And for the vast majority of persons out there, they're not taking their preteens and their teens, male and female, to get the HPV vaccine. Yeah. If we did that, we can eradicate persons dying of cervical cancer by the next generation.
So my thing is, and I often ask the question, right? Is our message wrong, right? Are we encouraging people to see doctor because they're sick? Or should we encourage them more to stay well?
Right.
I mean, is there a wellness message here that you need to go and see your doctor? Not because you're sick, not because you
Right.
have diabetes or because you have hypertension, because you're well.
Correct.
And you want to stay well. Right? How many young men out there, maybe the armed forces, maybe productive men out there who are totally well, don't have erectile dysfunction, don't have any other issue, but they don't see anybody because wellness is taken for granted, right? It's not considered a thing,
Or
right?
because of the culture, they think they're well, but they have a lot of
Well,
stress.
obviously they're not,
And then
right?
you ask them about their habits, and they'll say, "Oh, I don't really drink. I only have 6 or 8 beers every night."
But I'm wondering if our message is wrong, and to get people to change or should we reframe it, right? So that we can get our community to think more about staying well rather than, just going to the doctor when I'm sick or getting better there, but staying well. Maintenance of wellness.
Right.
Should that be our message now going forward? Because, I mean, we know a lot of people that are sick, but a lot of people are well. And while we treat the sick, we want to maintain the people who are well. And they also need to go and see. Of that 185,000, whatever number that was, that are enrolled in NHI, I wonder how many of them are well people.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
Is it all the sick people who are going who are enrolling in NHI? Because we need to take care of the other folks too, right? And I think maybe that's our message needs to change.
And we need to take responsibility for our health. We need to be
Individually, we need to.
We do.
Right?
And not only that, you can go to NHI, you can go to your physician. If you have insurance, you can go to your specialist or physician, and you're given medications. And some people just blindly take it. They don't understand what the medication is. They don't understand the name of the medication. They don't know the dose of the medication. Do some reading. Ask some questions. Why are you taking this medication? What is it doing? What are the potential side effects of that medication? How long do you need to be on that medication? What are the benefits of being on that medication? Is it possible that if we can change certain things in your behavior or otherwise, or your diet or losing weight, can you get off those medications? Can we lower the dose of that medication? Some of these medications cause horrible side effects, and persons just take themselves off of it. That's not the answer. Everybody's an individual. Certain medications are going to cause certain terrible side effects for certain persons that may not affect somebody else. If high blood pressure medication causes you to cough all the time, change it. If it causes you to have erectile dysfunction, change it. So you aren't the one to change it. You have to work with your physician. That's why it's important to have a wonderful working relationship with your physician. And as Dr. Gemarol says, if you don't have it with that particular individual, you only have one life. You want to live the best life possible and live as long as possible. You owe it to your family. Go and see somebody else. It's no problem. No physician is going to take any offense at that. They want their patients, they want the nation, they want persons to be healthy. And if that means that they don't have that rapport with their patient, then find someone that you do have rapport with. That's not a problem.
So a couple of things come to mind. One of the initiatives that this executive of the MAB have, and I'm going to hopefully see come into fruition, is that we have our National Registry of Physicians, where all physicians contact information and just their, an explanation of who they are, what they do, where they can be found. We want a centralized location of all the physicians where you can get all the information you want, and you can kind of select through based on the information that you have. I mean, you may look at the picture and you may say, hey, I connect with this person, right? As simple as that is. And you just pick a physician. Now, when we think about how can we change policies, I might get in trouble for this, but when we enroll our kids in school, every year, it's a new school year, they have to see their doctor, right? And you have to bring that slip to the school. How about all employers require their employees that one day in the year on their contract is for them to visit their physician, and they have to bring proof that they saw their physician? How about we put that in the legislation that this is a part of, not legislation, no, but this is a part of having a job in the country, is that you have to show that you've been seen by your physician. And you just set a date in your office that the last Friday of the third month of the year, it is the day for you to see your doctor.
Or your birthday month to make it easy.
Your birthday month. You license your car, you have to see the doctor. And you have to show proof of that. How about that? That's how everybody...
That sounds good. Change incentive, change behavior.
It sounds good, right?
Yeah.
We have to do something.
I don't know how you can enforce that, though.
And as overwhelming as things such as diabetes,
Sounds
cardiovascular
good.
disease,
I like it.
VAT was enforced,
I
right?
like it.
When we go to the store, we pay VAT.
you're very correct.
We do that despite us not wanting to.
We need to do something very radical.
Yes, why not?
You can't run a
Trump can
business.
do it in the U.S.
You
He's
can't
very
run a business
radical.
without having an accountant.
I need to go and see
Or
our
maybe
Prime
you
Minister.
can't get a job without having a doctor.
Let's go to the
That's what you
OPM
said?
tomorrow,
Let's go to
Doc.
But as
The
horrible
OPM
as, and Dr. Francis will attest, seeing patients with metastatic cancer, stage 4 cancer, seeing persons coming with the diabetic where you have to determine life or limb. Obviously, you have to take out the limb. It's a disturbing trend in terms of non-communicable disease, and that's in the alarming increase in the number of persons with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And that is something that's tragically affecting our society, affecting family members, affecting the patients. I can't even describe how horrible it is to see a patient who I've known for many, many years all of a sudden don't even recognize their wife, who might be physically violent to their daughter or sexually aggressive to a loved one. And it's such a burden on society. And there are things that we can do health-wise in terms of healthy living to reduce our chance of dementia. Unfortunately, we're prone to dementia and many other conditions because we're primarily of African ancestry. And it's a striking difference in regards to rates in dementia, with significantly higher diagnosis rates among Black adults and earlier onset compared to white adults. But the things that we can do to combat dementia, just healthier living. We can stay physically active. We can maintain a healthy diet. We can stay mentally active. We can involve ourselves with puzzles, reading, learning a new language when we're retired. We can stay socially active. We need to maintain strong family, friends, and community contacts. We need to manage our chronic health conditions. We need to get enough sleep. We need to definitely not smoke. We need to limit our alcohol intake. There are things that we can do to reduce the increasing trend where I'm seeing that a number of persons developing dementia.
I think education is probably the key, right, for the transformation of health. That's what I believe. And it takes a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years. And I think you start in the primary school, right? We got to educate our young kids and teach them, healthy lifestyle, healthy living from young. And I think once you start there, make it a part of the primary school curriculum that they have to learn about health and wellness. And I think when you start there, it's an investment that you'll see a return as they get older. And it should be a part of it from primary school, from grade 1, from kindergarten until they leave school. I suppose that education push is what will make a difference in healthcare in the next 10, 20 years. Because I think what we're seeing now are the lack of investment, or is the lack of investment in education or educating our population about health. And that's what we're facing now. And that's what we're dealing with. And we just take care of people when they come.
Well, I have a question that I'll put out to you, Dr. Francis and Dr. Roll. Is crime a non-communicable disorder? I mean, in the strict medical context, crime is generally considered a non-communicable condition. But when you look at the concepts of social contagion and the well-established fact of the intergenerational transfer of the effects of trauma, it raises the question as to whether or not crime and violence are in fact a non-communicable disorder in the social sense. And from my personal standpoint, crime is an overwhelming non-communicable disorder in our country, and it affects us and so many levels, and in so many levels. And if we can fight the scourge of crime, prevent young men, primarily, unfortunately, from becoming criminals from before their preteens, we can maybe change the health of the nation.
Yeah, I'll let Gemma take that one on. What's your thoughts of that?
What would drive a person to commit crimes may be a result of mismanagement of mental health, perhaps. So surely mental health issues are one of the top 10 non-communicable diseases, right? You have bipolar, you have anxiety, you have depression.
Or abject poverty. That contributes to it too as well.
Right,
So the lack of education, the lack of opportunity, the lack of persons, particularly, we've mentioned this many times, Dr. Francis, young boys, young men, not seeing a future, not using education as a tool to improve themselves and do better than their own parents.
So certainly the socioeconomic, the psychosocial impact of on persons' mental health would be a driving force or risk factor for the rates of crime.
What is more stressful in this society than you see someone come into your house with a gun, put a gun to your child's head, rob you in the middle of the night, and then
Trauma.
3 months later, you see them in the food store
Trauma.
with an ankle bracelet waiting for a trial that may happen in 5 or 6 years where you're going to be intimidated to ever testify against them. That's the problem in our society. That's why we have so many in the way of revenge killings, persons being killed by stray bullets. It's a very violent society. We have a very unhealthy society, and there's so many ways that we need to look at this problem.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I still think that an investment in education is an investment in health. Investment in education and also teaching young people how to deal with conflict resolutions, right? Conflict. There's always conflict every day. You just have to somehow resolve them in a way where you don't harm each other, right? And I think when we see people or individuals turn to crime for whatever reason, and again, crime, there's incentives to crime, right? I mean, believe it or not, I mean, crime pays.
For some men, that's their profession. That's their profession.
Yeah. And you have to somehow change those incentives. Teach people how to resolve conflicts. Teach people, I think, it is all about education. And I think you got to get that younger generation, and also in the home. A lot of what's happening is because you have communities where people grow up and see these things in the home, and it's just passed. So we call it a non-communicable disease, but it's a learned behavior. A lot of it is a learned behavior, and some learned behaviors can be changed. I don't think that, I think that there's hope out there. But I believe that there's hope in education. I believe that we start with the young people. We still have to put some policies in place to take care of what's going on now. But I believe that we have to invest in the future, invest in the young, invest in education of young people, of kindergartens, and grow them. And we'll see the difference.
And we don't emphasize enough the positive in our society. I keep mentioning that. The role models are out there.
Yes, they are.
As Dr. Francis will be the first to attest, and he came from very humble beginnings. He overcame overwhelming hardships to become a very fruitful and successful, the first surgical oncologist in the history of the Commonwealth of Bahamas. I mean, that's a monumental achievement for someone who came from the first street, the Grove. So
Second Street.
Second Street.
Yeah. Keep that stripes right. Second Street.
So people can overcome their circumstances. All it takes is, why is it that every time we look up in the newspaper, it's talking about crime and negativity, and there's so many things that are positive, things doing great things. We'll talk about our female scientist Bo going up into space, and in a small little article there, but then we talk about crime as a big headline. Why?
Exactly.
Why? Why don't we give hope to the young girls,
Yes.
the young men by stressing the positivity?
That's
the,
right.
The things that are positive in our
Positive
society.
is important, yeah.
That's right.
And it doesn't take much to change our diet. I mean, just replacing as much as 3% of our daily calorie intake with plant-based protein instead of animal protein,
Yeah, we have
associated
to grow.
with
We have to grow it.
a
It's
10%
expensive,
total
eh?
decrease in our overall mortality. So it doesn't take much to change.
Yeah, we have to start growing stuff, right?
We need to
Because
reduce
that's
our
that 3%.
processed foods.
Yeah.
We need to make sure
Yeah.
that we have exercise from young. We need to encourage sports. We need to encourage activities. It's horrific that we're surrounded by water, and if we look at the percentage of young boys and girls who can actually swim, it's terrible. It's terrible, and that's a wonderful physical activity.
Yeah. It is definitely. Well,
And just changing our diet, even at the age of 20 years old, from an unhealthy one to a healthy one, and maintaining it, that can increase our life expectancy for women by an average of 11 years, for men on an average of 13 years, and it's never too late. Even starting at the
never
age
too late.
of 60 years old, you can potentially increase your life expectancy by as much as 8 years. And we talk about the cancers. We talk about sedentary lifestyle, and we talk about breast cancer. We talk about alcohol being a modifiable risk factor for 6 different cancers, including breast cancers. Statistics have shown as many as 15% of breast cancers are directly linked to alcohol intake. So there are things that we can do, even if we're genetically predisposed, for example, as a primarily African ancestry population, to a higher rate of obesity, a higher incidence of diabetes or hypertension or cardiovascular disease, a more aggressive form of, as a urologist, a more aggressive form of prostate cancer. There are things that we can do to prevent ourselves from going down that road and living a longer, healthier life. And that's all that what this whole program is about: a healthier you, a happier you, and longevity.
Absolutely. Dr. Roll, thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's
And
always a
we're
pleasure.
wishing you all the best in the conference. I will certainly be there. I'm
Yes.
sure Gregeggory will be there.
Yes, he will
We're gonna
be.
support
So
you.
even if we change one person's life, we did our